Hello, my dear student. Welcome to another edition of your mathematics lesson. Today, in continuation with your main topic, bearings and distance, we are going to learn how to calculate the distance between one point and another. So let's begin. After completing the very lesson today, my dear student, will be able to calculate the distance of one point from another in a bearing question. This is what I hope you'll be able to do after completing the very lesson today. So as usual, in your favorite segment of the lesson, that is Maths Expanded, today, I'll give you another interesting number. This number is 29. 29 is so special, so interesting, so amazing. In fact, I'll tell you what is interesting about this very number if you stay to the very end of this very lesson. To begin the lesson, my dear student, let us learn the rule. It is this rule that will guide us what we do from first step to the last step, what we need to do in order to calculate the distance in a bearing question. So let's see the rules. So rule number one says convert the statement given in the question into diagram. Usually the question in bearing will be given in form of statements. So those statements, you have to change them or convert them into diagram. When that is now done, step number two, it says complete the necessary plane shape. So after converting the statement into diagram, in the end, you now have either a rectangle or a triangle. It depends on how many sides. So you need to complete it so that it gives you a particular plane shape. That is step number two. Step number three says extract the necessary angles and also extract the necessary sides. This gives you enough information to find whatever you asked to find. When that is now done, step number four, it says mark the side that you needed to find. That is the length of one of the sides that answered your question. So you mark that very side that gives you the answer to the question. And the last, you now select the appropriate rule. The rules that we usually select is sine rule or cosine rule. It depends on the information you have in the diagram. These are the 5 steps that you have to follow in order to find or in order to solve the bearing question successfully. So let us just move and take examples how we can now apply these 5 rules in order to answer the question. So example number 1, it says a ship travels 5 kilometers or a bearing 030, that is 30 degrees. It then travels on another bearing of 160 degrees for 14 kilometers. The question asked here is how far is it now from its starting point? Solution to this very problem. So step number 1, it says this question that is given in statement, we have to change it into diagram. So I will now change this statement, that is a ship traveling for 5 kilometers on this bearing. So I'm going to take this very bearing from where it's starting. And I'll now take this distance as well. Let me do that. So let's assume this is the starting point of the ship. So starting point, it now takes this bearing 30 degrees. This is the 3-digit bearing. So I will now take this angle from the north line, 30. Then I will now draw this line. This is the direction it takes. And it travels, so it travels this distance 5 kilometers. So this is the first trip. So this is now the position. From this place, it now then travels another different direction. That is 160 degrees for 14 kilometers. So there, I will now mark my cardinal points here. Let me do that so that I'll be able to take this bearing 160 degrees. So starting from the north line, taking angle 160. So it will now be in this quadrant. Look at it. So look at the angle 160 degrees. So this is the new direction it now takes. I will now draw a line, and this line is now travel 14 kilometers. This is the end, and I will now complete the plane shape. In this case, it is now a triangle. So I have done step 1 and step 2. Step 2 is the completing of the necessary plane shape. In this case, it is a triangle because I have 2 sides here. So I'll make it a triangle by completing this side to have the third side. So next step is now says you mark the side that you wanted to find. The side I wanted to find, it says how far is it now from its starting point. This is where the ship started and this is where it ends. So the distance between the end point and the starting point, because the ship finally is now here and this is where it started. So the distance between the two will now be the length of this side of this triangle. So let me mark X. This is the side that I wanted to find. So step 3 is also done. So step number 4, it says I should now find the necessary angles so that it will enable me to have enough information to apply either the sine rule or the cosine rule. I have these two sides of the triangle, 5 kilometer and 14 kilometer. If I can find this very angle, I'll be done. I can now apply the cosine rule because I have two sides and included angle. Let me see how I can find this very angle. Look at this is 30 degrees. This angle is 30 degrees. If this is 30 and this also, look at it, this angle, the two angles colored green, these two angles will now be alternate. If this is 30, this is also going to be 30 degrees. So let me mark it. And if I can find this, it will give me the whole of this angle. Look at it. If I can find this, I'll add it to 30 to give me this. And this very angle is nothing but 180 minus 160. The whole of this angle will be 180 angle on straight line. And from this to this is 160. So subtracting 160 from 1, it will leave me with this. And that angle is now going to be 20 degrees. So addition of 20 and 30 will give me this angle 50. Look at it. Which means I can now apply the cosine rule. So I've extracted the angles that will give me enough details to apply that cosine rule. So selected cosine rule. Cosine rule, remember, says c square equals to a square plus b square minus 2ab cos of angle at C. So my C is now the side that I wanted to find, which I lettered X. And my A and B will now be 5 and 14 kilometers. So substituted in this very cosine rule, I'm now going to have X square. That is this X that I wanted to find. That will now be 5 square for A plus 14 square for B. Then minus 2 times A times B. So times 5 times 14. Then multiplied by cos of angle at C. Angle at C will now be this angle 50 degrees, which is opposite to the side that I wanted to find. So this is cos 50. So what I'm now going to do, I will now find the 5 square, 14 square, and find the value of cos 50 from my calculator. So that gives me 25 as 5 square, 196 as 14 square. Then cos of 50 will now be 0.6428. So multiplying and adding, now I'm going to have 25 plus 196. That gives me 221. Then 2 times 5 times 14 times 0.6428. That what gives me 89.992. And subtracting this 89.992 from 221 correctly gives result 131.00. Then I have to find X. I will now take square root of both sides. That will leave me with X. So the square root of 131.008, if done correctly, you now have 11.45 kilometers to 2 decimal places. This would now be the distance between the starting point and the end point. Let me take one more example. Example number 2, it says two boats A and B leave the same port at the same time. Boat A sails at a speed of 30 kilometers per hour in the direction 50 degrees north of east, and the other boat B sails at a speed of 26 kilometers per hour in the direction 70 degrees southeast. The question asked here is how far are the two ships after each sails the 2 hours apart. So solution to this very problem, what we now do, we now mark the position where they started. That is the port. That is the port. So let's assume this is the port where they started. So the very first boat, that is boat E, takes this direction, 50 degree northeast, 50 degree northeast. So let me take the direction of boat E. Northeast meaning from the north. Measure this angle 50 degrees towards east. So this will now be the angle. Look at it, 50 degrees. So which means boat E. Take this direction. Let me draw the direction. This is the direction it takes. And it travels a distance d1, which I will now find the letter. That is the distance after 2 hours. I'll find it later on. So let me move to boat B. The direction it takes this direction 70 degrees southeast. Southeast, this is the south line. So towards east, I will now take this angle 70. So there I will now have the angle like this. So it now takes this direction. Look at the direction it takes, and it travels the D2 distance after 2 hours. So this is step number 1. Step number 2 says we now complete the necessary plane shape. I have 2 sides here, so I can complete the distance from A to B by drawing a line to make it a triangle. And I now mark the side that I wanted to find. The side I wanted to find is the distance between the 2 boats A and B after traveling or after sailing for 2 hours. This is the distance. It is now marked X. So what I'm going to do next, let me just extract these 2 distances, D1 and D2. You see, boat A has this speed 30 km per hour, and boat B has this speed 26 km per hour, and both the 2 ships or the 2 boats sails for 2 hours. So if I'm to find the distance traveled by each after 2 hours, what I'm going to do, I will now use the formula that connects the speed, the distance, and the time. That formula, remember, distance will now be equals to speed multiplied by time. So to find the D1, distance traveled after 2 hours by boat A will now be the speed of boat A, 30 km per hour, multiplied by the 2 hours it takes. So 30 times 2, that gives you 60. So this boat A, after 2 hours, it will now sails a distance of 60 kilometers. So I can now replace this D1 by 60. Look at it. So I'll now move again, find this D2, the same concept. D2 will now be equals to speed of boat B multiplied by the time it takes. So 26, look at it in the question, speed 26 in the direction. So 26 multiplied by 2 hours. That gives a result of 52 kilometers. So this boat B now travel after 2 hours, 52 kilometers. I can now replace this D2 by 52 kilometers. So I have extracted this distance. So what remains is to extract the necessary angles so that I will now have enough details, enough information to apply either sine rule or cosine rule. If I can find this angle, this very angle, look at it, this very angle, I call it blue. If I can find this angle, I can now apply my cosine rule because I have 2 sides and the included angle, and I wanted to find the third side, and that third side is opposite to this angle. So let me just think how I can get this angle. You see, this is 70, so I can get this remaining because the complete here is 90. Also, this is 50, I can get what remains here to make it 90. So there I'm going to have this angle here as 40, and this angle here as the 20. So adding 40 and 20 gives me the whole of this angle as 60 degrees. So there I can now set using cosine rule, I can now find the x. X, remember the cosine rule says c square equals to a square plus b square minus 2ab cos c. In this case, c is this x, and this is the point capital letter C. So cos C will now be cos 60. So substituting correctly, I now have x square equals to 60 square. So I now replace the A by this distance 60 kilometers and replace the B by this distance 52 kilometers. So I'm going to have 60 square plus 52 square minus 2 times 60 times 52 multiplied by cos 60. Cos 60 is this very angle, please. So I'll now find this 60 square, 52 square, and the value of cos 60. There, if done correctly, you have 3,600, that is 60 square. 2,704, that is 52 square, minus 2 times 60 times 52 times 0.5. This 0.5 is the value of cos 60. So there, I multiply this 4. There, I'm now going to have, that is the multiplication, 2 times 60 times 52 times 0.5 gives this result 3,120. So adding and subtracting, if done correctly, you now have 3,184. This is x square. I'm targeting to get x, so I'll take square root of both sides. Square root of both sides will now be x equals to 3 square root of 3,184. And that square root will now give result 56.43. This will now be the distance between the 2 boats after 2 hours. And with this, I have come to the end of the very lesson, my dear student. Thank you for your attention. So with this, I have come to the end of this very lesson, my dear student. I hope you enjoy it, and let me just move to the last segment, Maths is fun, and give you what is interesting about the number 29. 29 is the largest prime number. Among the prime numbers, this 29 is prime, and it is the largest prime number that what happened that can be expressed as sum of three square numbers, and those square numbers are consecutive numbers. So let me just do that and see. So 29 is now equals to 4 added to 9 gives you 13. 13 plus 16, you now get your 29 back. And if you now check 4, 9, and 16, both of them are square numbers. And if you now write the sequence of square numbers, you discover 4, 9, and 16 will now be consecutive. So among the prime numbers, it is this 29 that is the largest. That is the largest that can be expressed as a sum of the square numbers, and the square numbers are consecutive to each other. We see more of these things in mathematics in our subsequent lessons.